Welcome to the Toastmasters Experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters Experience. I'm excited and delighted to have with me in the studio today Charmaine Tully, who is a member of the Blue Mountains Toastmasters and who has been a Sergeant-at-Arms, a role that she thoroughly enjoyed. So this episode today will be about the Sergeant-at-Arms, and we're also going to talk about how you set up a room, how an event is set up, like all of the different competitions we've had. We've got conferences coming up. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. As Charmaine and I, we do have experience in setting up events. We're both not just Toastmasters, but we're also celebrants. And Charmaine also was a teacher for many, many years who organized many events. So welcome to the show, Charmaine.
Hello, Evelyn. How exciting it is for me to be here this morning.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Now, I know you loved being a Sergeant-at-Arms. Now, this was your very first executive role with Toastmasters and with Blue Mountains Toastmasters. So tell me why you put your hand up for this role.
I was a brand new member. I wanted to be on the executive because for myself, I like to have an input into whatever group I'm in. Sergeant-at-Arms seemed like a perfect fit for me. It was what I thought was a simple role, which turned out to be absolutely enjoyable because the Sergeant-at-Arms not only organises the venue, but they set the venue up. And often people have said to me, doesn't matter where we meet, doesn't matter as long as the speeches are there. And I have to say I disagree with that because I believe it doesn't matter where you meet as long as the room is set up in a way that is conducive to people walking in and doing their best.
Okay, so with Blue Mountains Toastmasters, what do you usually do? What do you usually do for the Sergeant-at-Arms role?
It's actually the unseen organisation and small attention to detail that people don't observe and they don't actually see as they walk into the room, but they feel it. It's creating an atmosphere. So do we want to speak about the elements of the room?
Everything.
The very first thing is, how are your tables organised? Are they in a horseshoe or do you have round tables? Even if you have round tables, how are they organised? Does everyone have equal sightline to the front? Where is your lectern placed? Is that in the centre? Can everyone see the lectern? Is the gavel on the lectern? The chairs. Are the chairs, if you have tables, are the chairs all put into the tables at the same distance? Something that you probably don't notice when you walk into a room, but if they're in a line, it creates order. If they're out of alignment, then that has a little bit of chaos energy in it. Are the chairs all aligned? Do you have glasses ready to go onto the table? And are the glasses placed on the table in the same line? Now, people say that I'm probably a little bit over pedantic, but it's all about creating the atmosphere. So you walk in, your tables are beautifully set up, your chairs are all in alignment, your glasses are all placed in alignment, and you have your agenda in each place. The other thing that I also do as Sergeant-at-Arms, which is completely behind the scenes, when I first walk in, because we're very lucky, we're at the Carrington, and the Carrington actually set up the tables and the chairs. But sometimes we have less people attending that particular meeting and more chairs. So I go through and I usually take out a chair from each table. So we have trestle tables, and 3 per trestle table can be a bit squishy. I often take out the middle chair so that there are just 2 per trestle table. Now, that's just the setup for the meeting. I did go to a meeting at a different club a while ago, and they had chairs stacked out the front. And whilst that for them was okay, for me it was a real distraction because I kept thinking, oh, what are they doing there? Why are those chairs there? They need to be at the side. You almost have to take them to the back. If you're stacking chairs, have them at the back or right over on the side where the sight line is not going to be taking your eyes to those stacks of chairs. The other thing that I also did when I was Sergeant at Arms was I had a table that when people walked in, they picked up their name tag. So what type of name tags do people have at clubs? We have a perspex, almost like a little triangle. Can't quite describe it with my words at the moment, but it has the name, everyone's name in it. You put it onto your table and everyone can see the names. Mm-hmm. Nice and easy. They're all lined up on the table for people to collect their names as they walk in. Visitors, there are some blanks for them to write their names. And I actually have provided, which they're still using, a whiteboard marker to write their names on the table tags. And I know that this sounds a little bit pedantic as well, but also what I did organise for the grammarian, so we have a grammarian in a meeting that chooses a particular word, I organised 2 whiteboards so that the word could be written on the whiteboard. We have one that is attached to the lectern and one that sits on a little stand at the back of the horseshoe of the tables so that the persons speaking can see the word. Mm-hmm. Now, I made the mistake a while ago of having a permanent marker where they wrote the visitors wrote their name. But what happened is that some of our members picked up the permanent marker and wrote it and used the permanent marker on the whiteboard.
Right.
So I know it's only a tiny little detail, but the visitors book is there. Yep. I have mints that I still supply that people can pick up, pens and tissues. All those tiny things that people don't notice. And in fact, people do actually take the pens. So I still replenish them. That's fine. Now, right out the front, we usually have our banner. I always try to, very discreetly, take the tube and put it out of sight that holds the banner. Because, again, remember, we need to be thinking about visually. The box of supplies I would always put up near the entry table so that when you're sitting at your table looking forward, you're not seeing any of that other paraphernalia that you don't need.
Right.
Also, two chairs either side at the front for speakers to be sitting in those chairs prior to when it's their turn to stand up and speak.
Yeah, and having 2 seats on the side for the Toastmaster as well. So if someone comes up on the left-hand side, the Toastmaster can just go sit at that seat on the right-hand side.
That's correct.
So it flows easily.
One other thing as well is the audio-visual, because I know that in lots of meetings at various clubs, members use the audio-visual for speeches. It's really important to have the HDMI cable plugged in and ready to go, because one of the secrets of a well-flowing meeting is not to have dead spots. And a big, I think, weakness is when we have to sit and wait for someone to put in the HDMI cable, turn it on, put their computer in with it. It's just more free-flowing. So you just need to be thinking about that. Is anyone going to be using audio-visual for our meeting? Have that set up ready to go.
And never keep the front space unoccupied. So if the Toastmaster is waiting for a speaker, just to keep clapping, waiting till the speaker gets there. And this is something we learned as celebrants as well, especially conducting, a funeral or wedding, waiting for the person who needs to speak to come up, and once they come up, sit down. And this is what we do at Toastmasters as well. So all those little details that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. Now, we are very lucky. We do meet at the Carrington Hotel in Katoomba, New South Wales, Australia, for those international listeners. So we do meet at quite a nice venue that we do pay for. And I know other clubs, they do get venues that are free. So how do you set up a venue where pretty much it's a room and you've got tables on the side and chairs on the side? Like, we have seen that as well. So what are tips and tricks that you can, for you who loves to organize, what can you share?
Well, I belong to another club that is for free, and they set up the trestle tables. And at our very last meeting, the trestle tables all had drink marks on them. For most people, they wouldn't even notice that. But for me, I certainly did. I'm going to put into my little toolkit that I take each week some wipes so that I can wipe the tables down. But things like, if you are in a venue where where you do have to set up and pack up, and I know that there are lots of venues like that, it's really important to have a little group of people that you nominate to help. Because the other thing about the Sergeant-at-Arms position is that it's a lonely job. And you really need to be asking people to assist. So you get some people to come in and assist, but have that attention to detail. As I said, the other club, for instance, that I belong to, I was assisting the Sergeant-at-Arms with the placement of the tables. I went in a little bit earlier at the last meeting and I moved all the tables forward because at the back of the room there's a storeroom with a curtain that protrudes out into the meeting space. And a few meetings ago, the tables were a little bit too close. So, and can I say, for some of us that are carrying a little bit of weight, it was a little bit of a squeeze getting behind people to be walking in and out. That's something that I've also made a little bit of a difference to. But even things like if you're in a venue where you're just using the chairs, to make sure the chairs are nice and straight. And the other thing that I always used to do when I was a teacher organising events is that I always set the chairs up with windows and doors. And I don't know whether you understand what that means. In the dancing community, you have a space between the two heads. So if you're sitting in an audience, usually what happens if you go to anything, you're sitting behind the person in front of you.
Right.
Which always happens to me. It's always a very tall person and I can't see. Whereas if you set your chairs just a little bit off to the side so that the person behind is looking through the gap between the two people, that's another thing that you can also do, just a small tweak in a meeting room if you're setting up your furniture before your meeting.
So another thing is that if you are a venue, which you just have chairs, is for the club or the Sergeant-at-Arms to supply clipboards just for those people who need to write their notes, So we do have something, because not all venues are lucky that have tables and beautiful, organization already. So those are things that you could do to help your room set up.
And the other thing as well, if you are in a club that offer to set it up, give them a map of where you want the tables.
Yep, like a diagram. Yeah,
like a diagram.
Yeah.
Yes, do a diagram. This is how many tables I want at the back. This is how many I want at the side. And if they don't do the chairs, that's fine. But the tables, I think, are the important thing. You can pop the chairs in afterwards.
Yeah,
which is really important. And the other difference that happens at the Carrington is that we have black tablecloths on our tables. And that visually actually sets the space beautifully.
Yeah, it does actually. I didn't think about that. You're right. Yeah.
Blue Mountains is about to have a combined meeting with Springwood in a week or so. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually taking my own black tablecloths, of which I have many from the events that I've organised over the years, and I'm actually going to put black tablecloths onto the tables for that meeting, just to create a little bit more of elegance to the room.
Yeah. I love that idea of having a diagram, because I know that a few years ago I did the area competition, and I did do a diagram how I wanted people to set everything up. But also with weddings, it's the same. You do have where people are sitting, but you do have the tables. And so I actually think that's a great idea for venues where you do have to set up, to maybe just create like how you want it set up, laminate it and put it in the, in the setup box. So I think that's a good idea that other clubs can maybe take forward.
Yes. And if it is that you're setting up chairs, the distance that you want those chairs from the front. I know that I don't know about you, but I've done a lot of outdoor weddings, and especially venues or non-venues. And when I arrive, the front row is usually about 2 or 3 metres away from where the couple are getting married.
Yes.
The ceremony.
Yes, yeah.
And so my husband and I are a fine team now. We move the chairs forward so that creates a little bit more of an intimate feeling. And it's the same for Toastmasters.
Yeah.
You don't want your lectern, 2 or 3 metres away from where people are seated, because you want people to be looking.
Yeah, and to be involved in a part of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
We also place our timer at Blue Mountains at the back of the horseshoe.
Yeah, directly opposite the speaker.
Opposite.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, which also makes a difference.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of meetings do that, but I'm not really sure. I haven't been to that many meetings. I have been to a lot, but you know what I mean. But you do get different ideas going to different clubs as well. But I also think it's important to, we don't just join Toastmasters to become better Toastmasters. And I spoke about that last 2 weeks ago with Alan Reese-Bevan. I interviewed him, and he really made it clear, like, we do join Toastmasters because we do want to bring our skills to the outside world, or the skills that we've learned in the outside world, we want to bring them into Toastmasters. So because of what we've done in our careers, we can bring those sort of ideas, organization ideas, into Toastmasters, like what we've learned, being a celebrant and even a flight attendant, because I know we were both flight attendants.
Yes.
And I remember before the passengers would get onto the airplane, I'd walk through the whole plane and just make sure everything looked perfect. And so I think for a sergeant at arms, it's probably good to walk through the whole venue space and make sure the chairs are aligned, like you said, the glass is there, maybe water's poured, the agenda. So those are little things that you can look out for as well.
And look at the floor.
Okay, yeah.
Because sometimes there are little bits of
Yeah.
paper or rubbish,
Exactly,
or someone's dropped a
exactly.
tissue.
Yeah.
Pick it up.
So that's like when we went through a walkthrough on the airplane before passengers
We
came
did.
on. And even before we married a couple or whatever ceremony, just walking through the venue before people come in. So that's really, really important. So another thing with Toastmasters is that we do have the different competitions, the area, the district, division. And in those situations, the timer actually has to be in front. So that kind of negates what we were talking about, having the timer in the back. So we've been to a few competitions. Is there anything that you've seen, how the room has been set up, that can slightly be improved, or that you liked what was working?
I think the venue is very important at a competition. And sometimes, again, if the venue is in a club, you're very limited to how you can set the room up. The one thing that I have noticed, and a point of improvement for anyone that's listening, is that the chairs need to be in windows and doors. Because yesterday at the competition that I attended, I couldn't see because the person in front had a was a tall person, I couldn't see around their head. And then the other thing is that they need to probably think about is the placement of the video, because it was all recorded yesterday. The video was right at the front and was right in the middle of...
It obscured a lot of the views.
It did, didn't it? It did. And even more importantly, on a competition day, you really need to nail the setup.
Definitely.
Because people are nervous. They're not, they're anxious about either their role on the day or their speaking on the day. And they need to be walking into a venue that's already set up. And it's the same whether it's a club venue or a competition venue. It's really important to get there very early so that people are walking into something that's already set up, as opposed to walking into a venue that people are still madly trying to put together.
I know sometimes it's hard for us Toastmasters because we're all volunteers. So, we don't really know what the right protocol is. And we all try to do the best that we absolutely can. But I do agree with you that the venue needs to pretty much be set up. And if there's music playing, because I have been to a few events where music was playing, I think it's got to be at the right volume and the right choice of music, because I have found at past events, sometimes the music was in party mode. And, this is before a competition. And like you were saying, people are nervous. They don't need to be listening to that party music. They need to maybe even just be totally quiet, to be honest, I think,
And in that case, sometimes, though, the audio people say that they need to have it for sound checks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it could be music that you might play at a wedding, that beautiful, rhythmic, just lovely music that if there's a little singing, absolutely, but it's that quiet, gentle music as opposed to that modern music, which tends to have that doof, 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 doof sound, which can be really jarring to a competitor who's attempting to be listening to a briefing.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think the music's okay after the competition. That's absolutely fine. We're in a celebratory mood. But before the competition, I think we need to be more mindful,
Yes.
So,
Yes. And look, in fact, Evelyn, the Carrington, sometimes when we arrive for our meetings, have that beautiful, quiet music being played from the speakers. And that is just glorious.
Yeah.
Obviously not when the meeting starts, because then we're all rushing around trying to work out how to turn it off. It occupies that auditory sense that we have that we're not even aware of as we're walking in.
So that's one of the things about creating an atmosphere, a space, is to think about those audio sort of noises that do happen. Music is one of them. Yeah. So
the other thing that we need to think about, if you're looking at the NLP work that was done, neuro-linguistic programming, their idea is that we have a number of senses. The first one is our visual. Our visual always kicks in first. Our auditory is second, and then our kinesthetic, how we feel about the room that we're walking into, comes in last. So visually, whether we know this or not, we are looking at the venue. The second thing we pick up is, what is the music? Is there any music? Is it silent? And then we respond with how we feel about it. And this is all so automatic, and it can happen within the first 5 seconds of walking into a venue. So that's why I was speaking about it's the unseen or the unrecognised, the small attention to detail that we don't notice, but we do respond to.
No, I absolutely love that. And I can absolutely relate. Because as I said, I've been to lots of competitions through the years, and I guess that sort of frenetic, out of control feeling I felt was probably because the music was played too loud. It was unorganized. The chairs weren't aligned, like you were saying. But
Yes.
it's very true. We're human beings. We do sort of feel things psychically, and that's probably what it was. I think this has been an absolutely delightful conversation. So I hope those who've been listening have gotten a few tips and tricks about setting up a room, maybe those unseen things that can be done. Charmaine, did you want to sort of wrap it up, summarize?
I think the more attention to detail that you put in And the more effort that you put in will result in better opportunities for speaking.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Charmaine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.